So I'm just going to be talking about this podcast that I watched. It's called The Mindset Mentor with Rob Dial. And I'm just going to be talking about the first episode, which was about how to never run out of things to say. The premise of the episode into 3 parts was the how to be interesting part, how to grow closer with people and bond with them, and how to be more personal and make them more personal and open up to you. So the first thing he talks about is how to never run out of things to say. So most people, when they talk to somebody, they try to be perfect. They try to not stutter, and they try to say the right things to make the other person happy. But that's not what your brain thinks. Your brain obviously thinks of the first thing that you see. The first thing that you notice about someone is their looks. Second thing when you get to know them is their personality. And third thing is what they like, pretty much. And your brain always judges people. Even though you don't want to, your brain will judge people on how they look. So you never obviously, when you see someone, you don't obviously tell them what you're thinking, what your brain thought, which was, oh, that person's really skinny, oh, that person's really fat. You obviously edit it down to make it seem less inappropriate for them. You make it more kinder, because you obviously don't want to hurt people's feelings. So you edit what your brain thought to actually say the right thing. But most people do this in daily conversations when they're not really supposed to. Let's say you're on a date and you notice the first thing about them. You notice they're beautiful, let's say. And your brain is like, oh my god, she's beautiful, he's beautiful. And you don't immediately say, well, sometimes you do, but your brain wouldn't immediately say, oh, you're so beautiful. You would edit it down so it'd be less crude and less blunt. So you always want to make sure that when you're doing that, at least, you should edit it down a little bit. You don't want to edit it so where you're saying a completely different thing, because when you want to talk to people, you don't want them to lie to your face. You don't want them to not be themselves. You want them to be who they really are. You don't want to be mean, of course, obviously, but you just want to make sure that you're yourself and you're saying your at least okay-ish thoughts. Let's say on the date, you're very one-dimensional. You're saying, like, your partner's asking, oh, what's your favorite movie? And you say, Star Wars. And you don't follow up. What you do after a question is you give feedback and you ask them the other question too. If they say, oh, what's your favorite movie? And you say, I love John Wick because this and that. Oh, what's your favorite movie? And you two can bond over that if they also like action movies, action, guns, things like that, really. You always want to make sure when they ask a question, you can bounce off of that to make it seem more personal. If they say, oh, I have a cat, you can say, oh, I love cats, but I wish I had one. I only have dogs. I can't get a cat. You can talk about that for a little bit and you can bond over your shared love of cats. And you can explain why you can't get a cat or something like that. You can always make sure that when they ask a question or say a question, you can answer it in 4 or 5 sentences, and then you ask them a question, because people don't like to hear how amazing other people are. If one of your friends was like, hey yo, I went to Bali for like a month and I did all these cool stuff, you'd be like, okay, that's cool, bro, but in your mind, you wouldn't really care, or you'd be a little bit jealous. But you never say that, of course. You just say, oh, that's so nice, bro. So you always want to make sure that when other people say something about themselves, you always want to respond to that with like something little about yourself, and then you respond to them, so it seems like you're trying to like make them the center of attention, which you are. But the main focus is that people don't like to hear about your story usually. They want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about how much they love the piano, how much they love doing boxing. They want to talk about all their passions. So let's say this person, the date that you're on, let's say they really love, they love cats. Yeah, let's say they love cats. You can keep asking them about questions about cats, facts, things like that. And since they love cats in this scenario, they'll be very passionate about cats, and they'll be willing to open up to you about their shared love of cats. And a good question you could ask them is like, why do you love this? Where did it begin? and like how, like why, what, how. Those are good questions to ask so that they can open up a little bit and explain the passion. It's a good way to make them feel like they're being personal with you and you're not really doing much. You're just asking them the good questions. Because everyone always hears these same questions like, how's your life going? Do you have any kids? How is your day going? How's the weather like? Who did you vote for? All those stuff, really. Everyone always hears those every day. You're not special if you do that. Because majority of people, they don't remember what they said to you yesterday. They don't remember the conversation you had unless it was really important, but they only remember how you felt, how you made them feel. Let's say you said I love you on the date. They wouldn't really remember that date a lot. They'd remember like the good parts. They wouldn't remember the whole day, the whole 2 hour date. They'd remember maybe 30 minutes of it. But they'll remember how they made you feel special. They'll remember how they made you feel. So you always want to make sure that you make them feel at least something so that they'll be able to remember what you were trying to tell them, what you were trying to accomplish with them. Now, while we've run out of things to say, I never said this, but we've run out of things to say because we try to seem interesting. We try to seem like the most interesting person in the world, but you run out of things to say because you're kind of lying. You're not saying the truth. You want to make sure that if you're saying something personal, you say the truth. You don't lie about what you're actually telling them. If you tell someone, oh, I went on a cruise like last year, but you say it was the most expensive cruise in the world, I met Beyonce there, obviously it's a lie, but you can't really base the good stuff in your life with lies, because it doesn't even seem, like even if you do a little lie, it doesn't even seem, if you do that and the person notices, it seems like the whole thing is a lie because you're not honest and you don't seem natural. That's the main point. You have to seem natural and you need to seem like you're interested. Because you can talk about your cruise all day long, but you don't want to make it center of attention. You want to sprinkle it in a little bit here and there. On your date, if you say, I went on a cruise for like a year, a year ago, you could explain it for a little bit and then you could ask a follow-up question like, oh, have you ever been on a cruise? Things like that. So you can make it about the other person rather than just yourself.